some follow-up videos that I want to do. Well, I've got the cameraman Josh here. So these dawn redwoods were wired maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, just to show you how vigorous these trees are. These were wired from our 3-year-old seedlings, so this tree is only like 4 or 5 years old. And these were wired by Teemill back in October of 2021. And by April of this year, we were able to remove the wire. You can still see faint trace of the mark here. So just in an S shape, and it was wired, and that is how quickly it sets. All this growth is 2 months. So they're really vigorous trees. Really, really vigorous trees. And when I tell you that this was done about 8 or 10 years ago, you can really understand how quick they do set shape. Now, these are all branches that have been produced literally in the last year or so. And to keep them under control, let me just do a little bit of wiring. Let me just find some wire cutters. We don't like to let the branches go crazy. And as I said, they set so quickly that within 3 months you can get the branches to completely set. So this is not exhibition wiring, this is just wiring to set the branches. So as long as it does the job, it doesn't matter how you do it. I want the branches to be horizontal, and then I will trim the ends so the energy goes back into the tree. The habit of the dawn redwood, because it's a vigorous tree, is for the branches to grow straight up. Can you see these branches going straight up? I don't really want that, you know. If you don't control it, you lose control completely. But it does make a dense tree. But if I want a more perfect tree, I will take those off. The vertically growing ones I will take off, and perhaps wire it at the back. The dawn red was a favorite subject because the foliage is so delicate. So that is how I would plant it at this angle. So this I know is a constant process that you've got to do, but we get round to doing it as and when we can. Let me just show you some other follow-up progress. I don't think we need to move the trees there. Come with me, Birch. Back in, I think it was April, we did some root cuttings of the field maple. This big field maple, the roots were coming out of the bottom of the pot, so we cut the roots with a saw or whatever, or lopper, and we just put it in ordinary garden mud. So these are all roots. Can you see how they're all growing? So all these will become nice little trees. So that's a typical example of the root cutting. And this was the big tree. So again, they're so rampant. And look at it, the hedging honeysuckle growing within this tree. I can't even get it out. I think it was just a seedling growing in there. Okay, let's do a bit of training to this. Just to show you how we keep dealing with these trees. This is what we call the not so pretty side of bonsai. You know, while they're growing, they don't look anything, but you still got to deal with it, otherwise you do lose control. You can see how I've been creating taper. Good example of taper creation. So much is written, talked about taper, but people talk, but they are not able to do. So you see here, we cut that there, so it's rotted away. New shoot grew from here to there. We cut that off there. Then another shoot grew there. We cut it there, and then another shoot go there. So that's how taper is produced. For all the talk that people do, you know, this is how it is done in practice. So you may talk a lot, but unless you're able to produce the results, it means nothing. So this is how we create our trees. This is all grown in the field to begin with, to make the tree strong. And when the tree is strong enough, now we should roughly wire these branches. Now let me just get some second-hand wire. It's quite a job because we have hundreds of trees in the field, hundreds if not thousands, and they all have to be dealt with from time to time, but we get round to it as and when we have the time. Keep the branches horizontal, otherwise they spring up. And I try not to leave too many branches growing there, because although it is tempting, if you have too many growing, you get what is called inverse taper. Too many branches growing from one spot makes that spot swell up, and you don't want that. You certainly don't want that. So this is a new leader, so let that grow. And then we can, so we haven't decided on the front, we can tilt it all sorts of different ways. Let me just do a little wiring to this branch. This is only roughly put here, just to get it growing horizontally. You can put it any or how. In these bonsai producing countries, they even use guy wires, whatever. So that's how we proceed with that. Now again, this is a follow-up of another project. This is that Acer nego. And if you remember back in April, 3 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, we pruned everything off. So all these are new shoots that have grown. They've all grown since the last 3 months, and we're now going to produce more ramification. I don't want to let it grow uncontrolled, unchecked. I need to control it somehow. So I think these 2 branches could do with weighing down. I don't know about this little one. If this is the front, probably I don't need it. Bite the bullet. As they say. Too many branches there, you may get inverse taper, so let's take those off. So keep the principal branches like that. So we're going to wire those 2. Let me just get a thick piece of wire.
Button up everywhere.
This is not a traditional species that bonsai people use because the leaves are so darn big, isn't it? But it's got a lovely color. The new growth is almost triple color, pink, cream and green. But they do make bonsai. I've not often used it, but you can, so I've got to be careful how I bend it. And then that one will be wired at the back. And see, the natural leader is growing there, so let's hope some grow here. That has died back. You can never guarantee where the branches will grow, where you want them to grow. So you sometimes got to be a bit patient. So that basically is the shape of the tree. The main work was creating the trunk, and you see it was chopped there, and then let it grow there, then it's chopped here, grown there, then chopped here. So that is how we create taper. So taper is a long-winded process. That's got to be wired at the back. So that is that one done. So while we were looking around, we came across this lovely silver birch. Many people ask me, why don't you use silver birch for bonsai? And my answer has always been that silver birch has a tendency to loose branches for no rhyme or reason. They don't keep the branches long. So for instance, look at it, it's already silvering, but the two branches there, trunks, died away completely. But they made this very nice dead feature, look at it. So this is what happens generally when you try to use silver birch. So I cut it there, cut it there, cut it there. You see the new leader forming? We don't produce these commercially because they're not viable. They're very hard to produce in large quantities. So that's all I've done to it. Just let it grow and you can see what a pretty little tree that makes. Silver birch. Maybe in a round pot you can show it whichever way you want. So, but as you can see, it is quite an old tree, really old tree. That ugly root is girdling around the main trunk, but no harm, that's okay. And I think in a little pot would look quite interesting. Now let's see some other little projects that we have lying around. This was a project that I did maybe a couple of years ago. And this is one of the Mugo piles, I think. There's so many types of Mugo. And what I did here was simply try and crack the trunk by splitting it. Let me put it in a temporary pot. The tree is so top heavy that it won't stand up on its own. Okay, let's get one of those clay pots. Bigger one?
Bigger.
So this has got all the makings of a literati. Look at it. You see what I did here? We literally snapped the tree up like that and tied it with a guy wire. So in 2 years, look at it. It's set in shape. So you can do that sometimes if you wish. How interesting is that? Endless possibilities, endless possibilities. Let's do a literati, instant literati. So when you're faced with this, what do? We can always do something. So let's see what we can do. Now, remember that in literati, the principle of less is more is so important. A lot of people are tempted to keep too much. So this long branch, you've got to see if it has any function. Does it have a function? Probably not. Probably not. So let's concentrate on just these two and make a gin with that. Or I know that I'm not going to use all of it, so let's bite the bullet, cut that off. Less is more. And then wire these two. So no magic involved. I'm doing it as you see it. Trying to use some old wire just to show that I don't waste wire. And I'm going to wire these two branches. The famous two-branch principle. Practice what I preach. People always ask me, how do you see the design of the tree? I think a lot of it is intuition. When you're faced with a tree, you somehow get a feel for it. It's something that's very hard to explain. The more you work on trees, the more you will get the feel for it. I'm by no means the greatest artist. There are a lot of people who have better vision than I do, but for what I do, it works. And I hope some of this rubs onto my viewers. So, although the branches were hanging down, we needed to go up as well. And then this coming here. Remember that the literati tree is like a Chinese painting. It's got to be dramatic, like a painting. Maybe that is too much. One piece of wire is all I've used, one piece of wire. This, mind you, is quite an old tree, pretty old tree. And I haven't even wired these. Perhaps I will wire it for good measure.
So,
yeah. We have hundreds of these little pines lying around the nursery. And whenever I pass it, I think to myself, what can I do with it? And somehow we will always find a solution for it. So nothing is ever wasted, as we say. This is badly neglected. It doesn't even get watered regularly. That's the beauty of pines. Pines and junipers can stand drought quite well. In this heat, they're surviving quite well. So just a couple of pieces of wire and you've got the makings of a nice literati. What I wanted to show you about this project is how I achieved this very difficult bend. It's almost like 70 degrees, isn't it? It's less than 90 degrees. And that was simply by splitting it there, tying it with a guy wire for a couple of years, and you were able to bend that trunk. So how nice is that? So that's another project done, one of these follow-ups. And I've got another point to show you what a lot of work I have in store. This is one of those imported Japanese 5-needle pine of white pines and grafted onto black pine stock. And again, I just let it grow. Sometimes when they come from Japan, I find that trees that come from Japan, they're not acclimatized to the British weather and climate, and they tend to sulk the first couple of years they come into the country. So those of you who grow these pines may experience difficulties with it. So again, I've just let it grow. It lost some branches, so it's grown a lot, and I think it's grown too much, so I've got to bite the bullet, get rid of some of the branches. There's too much there. Take the tips out and it will bud back further. So that's how it's going to be wired. I'll wire it up and I'll follow up the progress on this tree. So I'll take my time and do a nice job with this one. I think we need to wire something. So there we are, we wired this tree and made it look more rational. Quite different from what a typical Japanese tree would look like. It's more structured, and this is going to be the start of its journey. So thank you, Josh, for doing that.